Good evening, and welcome to Sleep Sanctuary, where calmness and imagination meet to guide you into a restful sleep. Close your eyes and let the world soften around you. Tonight, we embark on a journey into the stillness of a forgotten place, a place where dreams wait patiently to be remembered. It began on a moonlit night, deep in the heart of a vast, ancient forest. I had wandered too far, drawn by the gentle rustling of leaves and the faint whispers carried on the wind. The trees stood tall and solemn, their branches arching overhead like a cathedral, and the air was thick with the earthy scent of moss and damp soil. The deeper I ventured, the more the forest seemed alive, as though it held secrets too profound for words. The whispers grew louder, not voices exactly, but something softer, a hum, a song, perhaps, calling me forward. Then, through the tangled undergrowth, I saw it, a weathered building half hidden by ivy and shadows. Its arched doorway glowed faintly, beckoning me closer. It felt out of place yet perfectly at home, as though the forest had grown around it to keep it safe. I stepped forward, unsure of what I might find, but certain that I was meant to enter. And so, the story begins. Before we continue, let us pause and settle into a moment of calm. The journey ahead is gentle, but to fully embrace it, we must first release the weight of the day. Find a comfortable position, whether you're lying down or seated, and close your eyes if you wish. Breathe in deeply through your nose, letting the cool air fill your lungs, and then slowly exhale through your mouth. Feel the tension leave your body with each breath, like a soft wave retreating from the shore. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a quiet forest. The ground beneath your feet is soft, covered in a carpet of moss and fallen leaves. Above you, the trees sway gently, their branches whispering secrets to the night sky. A faint glow filters through the canopy, casting dappled patterns of light and shadow around you. Listen closely. Can you hear it? The rustle of leaves, the distant chirp of crickets, the soothing rhythm of your own breath. The forest welcomes you, wrapping you in its stillness, its serenity. With every breath, you feel yourself sinking deeper into this peaceful moment. The cares of the day fade, replaced by the quiet harmony of the woods. There is no need to rush. The story will wait. For now, simply be. Let your breathing fall into a natural rhythm. Inhale, feeling the cool air refresh you. Exhale, letting go of any lingering tension. With each breath, you grow lighter, calmer, more connected to the stillness around you. When you're ready, we'll take the first step together into the heart of the forest, where forgotten dreams lie waiting to be rediscovered. Until then, rest here for as long as you need. The quiet is yours to keep. The doorway was an arch of stone, worn smooth by time and framed with ivy so thick it seemed alive, shifting slightly with the breeze. I hesitated for a moment, standing just outside, as though crossing the threshold might set something in motion that could not be undone. But the forest behind me felt watchful, and the faint hum I had followed now seemed to resonate from within. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and entered. Inside, the air changed, cooler, stiller, carrying the faint scent of aged paper and ink. The room before me stretched far beyond what should have been possible, its walls lined with shelves that climbed into shadows so deep I could not see their end. The shelves were crowded with books of every size and color, their spines bearing intricate patterns and symbols instead of titles. A soft, golden light illuminated the space, though I could not find its source. I walked slowly down the first aisle, running my fingers lightly over the spines. Each book seemed to pulse faintly, as though alive. Some felt warm to the touch, others cool, and still others sent a faint shiver up my spine. I paused to open one, its cover heavy and textured like leather. Inside, I found not words but vivid images, almost like memories, playing out as I turned each page. A young girl painting beneath a vibrant sunset. A man standing at the edge of a cliff, staring out over an endless ocean. A soft, wistful ache settled in my chest as I closed the book and returned it to the shelf. "These are the dreams," a voice said behind me, soft and low like a breeze through the trees. I turned sharply to find a figure standing a few feet away. It was hard to discern their features, cloaked as they were in a flowing garment that shimmered like twilight. Their eyes, however, were clear and steady, holding mine with a quiet understanding. "Dreams?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," the figure replied. "Dreams that were once cherished, but abandoned, set aside, forgotten, or lost. They come here, waiting for their dreamers to return." The words sent a shiver through me. I looked back at the shelves, now seeing the books for what they truly were, fragments of lives, remnants of hopes and desires left behind. "Why are they here?" I asked. "To remind you," the figure said simply. As I continued walking, I noticed that the books seemed to shift subtly as I passed, like they were reaching out, vying for my attention. The figure followed silently, their presence neither comforting nor threatening, but simply there, like a shadow. One book, larger than the rest and bound in deep blue, caught my eye. I reached for it, hesitating briefly before pulling it from the shelf. It felt heavy in my hands, as though it carried the weight of something important. And then, As I opened it, the world seemed to hold its breath. The book in my hands felt alive, humming faintly as I opened its heavy cover. Inside were images that seemed to leap from the pages, scenes of a life I had never lived, but could almost feel. A woman sitting alone in a quiet cafe, sketching designs for a dream she would never pursue. A boy standing before a piano, his hands poised to play, but never pressing the keys. A man packing his belongings into a suitcase, leaving behind a letter he would never send. Each page unfolded a story, not in words, but in sensations. I could feel the sharp pang of regret, the fleeting thrill of hope, and the quiet resignation as these dreams were abandoned. The book was heartbreakingly beautiful, but it wasn't mine. Gently, I closed it and placed it back on the shelf. I moved deeper into the library, drawn by the sheer variety of books. Some were small, their spines faded and fragile, while others were enormous, radiating an aura of importance. Each one seemed to hum with its own unique energy, as if waiting for the right hands to claim it. I reached for another book, this one bound in a soft, mossy green. As I opened it, a memory unfolded, though not my own. A young girl, no older than 12, was standing in the middle of a meadow, her arms outstretched to the sky. She dreamed of flying, of feeling the wind beneath her as she soared above the earth. The pages shifted to show her older, sitting at a desk, surrounded by papers and deadlines. The dream of flying had been tucked away, replaced by practicality and obligation. Closing the book, I glanced around and noticed how silent the library was, yet it didn't feel empty. Each book carried the weight of a voice, a story longing to be heard again. I opened another, and another, each revealing a fragment of someone's forgotten ambition. A man dreamed of being a poet, but had set down his pen after years of rejection. A woman dreamed of exploring the world, but had stayed home out of fear. A child dreamed of building a castle from stones and stories, but had abandoned it when no one believed in their vision. The dreams felt both intimate and universal, each one echoing with a question, "Why did you give up?" And then, as I wandered deeper into the library, I began to wonder about my own story. I hadn't thought much about my dreams in years. Life, with all its responsibilities and distractions, had a way of sweeping them under the rug, until they felt like distant memories or childish fancies. Had one of my dreams found its way here? The thought settled heavily in my chest. If it had, what would it look like? Would I even recognize it? The library seemed to respond, the shelves humming slightly louder, as if encouraging me to search further. I took a deep breath and pressed on, my curiosity mingling with a quiet unease. I wandered through the endless shelves, each step drawing me deeper into the heart of the library. Though the air was still, I felt a pull, as if something unseen was guiding me. The hum of the books grew softer, gentler, until only one shelf seemed to whisper my name. My hand hovered over the spines, pausing on one that seemed to radiate warmth. Its cover was bound in deep gold, smooth to the touch but worn at the edges, as though it had been handled many times before. My fingers tingled as I slid it from its place. The book felt heavier than the others, as if it carried more than just words or images. When I opened it, I was startled to see a reflection of my own life staring back at me. The first page showed a young version of me, wide-eyed and full of dreams. I was sitting at my childhood desk, sketching designs and writing notes with a fervor that seemed endless. The dream was so clear then, a passion I poured my heart into every spare moment I had. As I turned the pages, the scene shifted. I saw myself sharing this dream with others, my voice trembling with excitement. There were moments of encouragement, yes, but also quiet dismissals, looks of doubt, and whispered warnings that this path was impractical. I watched myself begin to hesitate, to second-guess the dream that once lit a fire in my chest. Then came the page that made my breath catch. I saw myself standing in front of a drawer, slipping my notebooks and sketches inside, closing it with a quiet finality. I turned away, leaving the dream behind. The page shimmered with the weight of that choice, and for a moment, I felt the same ache of loss I had buried long ago. Why had I given up? The reason seemed trivial now, but at the time, they had felt overwhelming. Life had a way of demanding so much: work, responsibilities, the expectations of others. Slowly, the dream had faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of practicality. But as I flipped to the final pages of the book, I saw something unexpected. The dream hadn't died. It had been waiting, quietly growing in the background of my life. Every time I felt that pang of longing, that spark of curiosity, it was the dream calling to me, urging me to remember. Tears blurred my vision as I closed the book and held it tightly to my chest. The warmth of it seeped into me, filling the hollow space I hadn't realized was there. This dream was mine, and it had never truly left me. In that moment, I understood why I was here. The library hadn't just preserved forgotten dreams, it had been waiting for me to find mine again. The question now wasn't whether I could reclaim it, but whether I would dare to try. As I stepped out of the forest, the golden light of dawn stretched across the horizon, painting the world in hues of warmth and promise. The blank book was still in my hands, its weight a reminder of the responsibility I now carried, to honor the dream I had reclaimed and to shape the story waiting to unfold. I paused to take a deep breath, letting the cool morning air fill my lungs. Everything around me felt sharper, more alive. The leaves on the trees shimmered with dew, the distant hills seemed to beckon, and the soft hum of the waking world stirred a quiet joy within me. It was as though the library's magic had followed me, infusing the ordinary with possibility. As I looked at the blank book, I felt a flicker of doubt. Where should I begin? The enormity of starting anew threatened to overwhelm me. But then, I remembered what the librarian had said. The library's purpose was to remind me of what I already knew. And deep down, I realized I did know. The dream wasn't about grand gestures or immediate perfection. It was about taking one step, then another, trusting that each small action would bring me closer to something meaningful. The blank book didn't need to be filled all at once. It was a canvas for moments of courage, creativity, and rediscovery, a space to honor the journey as much as the destination. I opened the book, running my fingers over its smooth, empty pages. It didn't feel daunting anymore. It felt inviting. Picking up a pen from my pocket, a simple tool, yet so full of potential, I wrote the first word. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And with that single word, the dream stirred to life once more. As I walked toward home, the world around me seemed to mirror my own transformation. The path was familiar, yet it felt different, as if imbued with the quiet certainty that I was moving toward something important. I thought of the library, its endless shelves filled with the dreams of so many others. Perhaps some would never be retrieved, their dreamers too lost in the noise of the world. But I hoped that others, like me, might find their way back. The library's doors would always be open, waiting for those ready to listen to the quiet hum of forgotten possibilities. When I reached home, I set the blank book on my desk. It caught the morning light, glowing faintly, as though it held its own quiet magic. I smiled, knowing that I didn't need to fill it all at once. The journey would take time, and that was okay. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, connected to something greater than myself. The path ahead wasn't entirely clear, but it didn't need to be. I had the courage to move forward, one page, one dream at a time. And so, with an open heart and an open book, I began. The library felt different now. The once hushed and mysterious atmosphere seemed lighter, almost welcoming. The weight that had settled on my chest when I first arrived was gone, replaced by a quiet determination. I stood in the aisle, holding the golden book and the blank one, feeling the significance of both. The golden book had shown me the path I had abandoned, the dream I had once held so dear. The blank book was something entirely new, untouched, waiting for me to decide what would fill its pages. The librarian stood silently nearby, their presence comforting yet unobtrusive. "Is it time for me to leave?" I asked, my voice low. They nodded, their gaze steady. "You have found what you came for. The library's purpose is to remind you of what you already know. What you do with that knowledge is yours to decide." I looked around one last time at the endless shelves filled with forgotten dreams. Each book hummed faintly, holding the stories of people like me and dreamers who had lost their way but might one day return. The thought filled me with hope. If I could find my way back, perhaps others could, too. As I moved toward the entrance, I felt a pull, as though the library itself was reluctant to let me go. I paused at the threshold, glancing back at the vast, quiet space. "Will I ever return?" I asked softly. The librarian's voice was gentle. "Perhaps. Dreams evolve, and so do we. But remember, the library is always here when you need it." With those words, I stepped through the arched doorway and back into the forest. The air outside was crisp and cool, carrying the earthy scent of moss and fallen leaves. The forest seemed brighter now, the trees less imposing, as though they, too, had been transformed. I clutched the blank book tightly, its smooth cover cool against my fingertips. The golden book had stayed behind, its purpose fulfilled. But this new book was mine alone, waiting to be filled with new chapters, new dreams, and new beginnings. The path through the woods was clearer now, as if illuminated by an unseen light. Each step felt purposeful, the weight of hesitation and doubt left behind in the library's quiet halls. As I walked, I reflected on what the library had given me, and not just the memory of a forgotten dream, but the courage to reclaim it. I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to know the entire path ahead. All I needed was the willingness to take the next step, to allow the dream to guide me forward. The trees parted, and I emerged from the forest into the familiar world I had left behind. But something had changed. The landscape looked the same, yet I felt different, lighter, more certain. I looked down at the blank book in my hands. The story of my rediscovered dream had already begun, and I was ready to write the next chapter. As I stepped out of the forest, the golden light of dawn stretched across the horizon, painting the world in hues of warmth and promise. The blank book was still in my hands, its weight a reminder of the responsibility I now carried to honor the dream I had reclaimed and to shape the story waiting to unfold. I paused to take a deep breath, letting the cool morning air fill my lungs. Everything around me felt sharper, more alive. The leaves on the trees shimmered with dew, the distant hills seemed to beckon, and the soft hum of the waking world stirred a quiet joy within me. It was as though the library's magic had followed me, infusing the ordinary with possibility. As I looked at the blank book, I felt a flicker of doubt. Where should I begin? The enormity of starting anew threatened to overwhelm me. But then, I remembered what the librarian had said. The library's purpose was to remind me of what I already knew. And deep down, I realized I did know. The dream wasn't about grand gestures or immediate perfection. It was about taking one step, then another, trusting that each small action would bring me closer to something meaningful. The blank book didn't need to be filled all at once. It was a canvas for moments of courage, creativity, and rediscovery, a space to honor the journey as much as the destination. I opened the book, running my fingers over its smooth, empty pages. It didn't feel daunting anymore. It felt inviting. Picking up a pen from my pocket, a simple tool, yet so full of potential, I wrote the first word. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And with that single word, the dream stirred to life once more. As I walked toward home, the world around me seemed to mirror my own transformation. The path was familiar, yet it felt different, as if imbued with the quiet certainty that I was moving toward something important. I thought of the library, its endless shelves filled with the dreams of so many others. Perhaps some would never be retrieved, their dreamers too lost in the noise of the world. But I hoped that others, like me, might find their way back. The library's doors would always be open, waiting for those ready to listen to the quiet hum of forgotten possibilities. When I reached home, I set the blank book on my desk. It caught the morning light, glowing faintly, as though it held its own quiet magic. I smiled, knowing that I didn't need to fill it all at once. The journey would take time, and that was okay. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, connected to something greater than myself. The path ahead wasn't entirely clear, but it didn't need to be. I had the courage to move forward, one page, one dream at a time. And so, with an open heart and an open book, I began.
you.